A very good day to all of you. Today we are going to continue the fifth part of lesson 8 from grade 10 Health and Physical Education lesson series. And the lesson is about maintaining a healthy body. In this part of the lesson, we are going to talk about the reproductive system. So we have the male reproductive system and the female reproductive system. And in these slides, we are particularly focusing on the female reproductive system. So in overall, the main function of the reproductive system is to produce offsprings. And both male and female reproductive systems, although different, produce reproductive cells known as gametes. So the female gamete is known as ovum or egg, and the male gamete is known as the sperm. So the reproductive system remains inactive during the childhood until one attains puberty. So during puberty, the secondary sexual characteristics develop, and then the body starts producing reproductive hormones and mature gametes, either the ovum or the sperm. Alright, so first let's look at the parts of the female reproductive system. So as you can see, the female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries. There are 2 ovaries, and then there are 2 fallopian tubes, a pair of fallopian tubes, and then there's the uterus, or else known as the womb, and then there's the vagina. Here you have the cervix. Then it comes to the vagina, and then there's the external sex organ. So here you can see where the uterus is located at. It's right behind the bladder. And if we talk about the functions of the female reproductive system, the ovary is there to produce ova, or else the eggs and the hormones, the female hormones. And then the fallopian tube, what it does is that it transports ova produced in the ovary from the ovaries. It transports to the uterus or the womb. And also when fertilization happens, the fertilized ova is also transported to the womb through the fallopian tubes. So a fertilized ova means an egg cell that has been fertilized by a sperm cell. So that is what you mean by a fertilized ova. So it could be a fertilized ova if it has been fertilized by a sperm cell, or else the ova is transported from the ovaries. So it's the function of the fallopian tubes. And then there's the womb or the uterus. So its main function happens during pregnancy, which is providing nutrients and protection to the growing embryo and fetus till it is born. And then vagina, the use of it is the sexual intercourse and also deposition of sperms, and also, as you know, the baby is born through vagina. Now let's look at each of these organs of the reproductive system. If we talk about ovaries, the main function of ovaries is to produce female gamete cells, or else ova, or else eggs, and also hormones. Not only gamete cells but also hormones are produced by the ovaries. And at birth, a female has ovaries containing millions of immature ova. They do have ova by birth itself, but they are immature. So these ova starts maturing once a girl attains puberty, and then one ovum is typically released every 28 days in the menstrual cycle. So that's what happens in the menstrual cycle. One ovum is typically released, and it happens typically every 28 days. And as I said, ovaries also produce hormones which are known as estrogen and progesterone. The function of estrogen is that it helps in the development of secondary sexual characteristics, and the function of progesterone is that it prepares the uterus for pregnancy. So these are like the main functions. There are some other functions related to these hormones as well. So that's a gist of the ovaries. The next part that we are going to talk about is the fallopian tubes, or else known as the uterine tubes. So the fallopian tubes are located near the ovaries. Here you can see an ovary, and this is the fallopian tube. So as you can see, it is located near the ovaries, and this is about 10 centimeters long. And this is a narrow tube. It is also like a funnel at the part covering the ovaries. You can see this part, it looks like a funnel taking in all the ova released by the ovaries. And the function of the fallopian tube is that it connects the ovaries to the uterus. Here you have the uterus, so the fallopian tube connects the ovaries to the uterus, and also it transports ova from the ovaries to the uterus. And also if fertilization happens, here you can see an example. If fertilization happens, it usually occurs inside the fallopian tubes if sperm is present. So those are the functions of the fallopian tubes. We are going to talk about the womb or the uterus. So the womb is a hollow and a muscular organ. Some of the main functions of the womb are receiving the fertilized ovum from the fallopian tube. So the fertilized ovum passes along the fallopian tube, and it finally is received by the womb. And the womb is also the organ which supports the growth and development of the fetus during pregnancy. And also since this is a muscular organ, it can expand as the fetus grows. And also the womb is the organ which provides nutrients and protection until birth. So next, if we talk about the vagina, vagina is a muscular canal, and it connects the uterus to the outside of the body. So the functions of the vagina are that it receives sperm during intercourse, and it also serves as the birth canal during normal childbirth, and it also allows the exit of menstrual flow, and it provides protection against infections with its acidic environment. So the vagina, this canal has an acidic environment, so it is also providing protection against infections. In this slide, we are going to talk about the menstrual cycle and female reproductive hormones. So the menstrual cycle is 28 days long, and as we discussed before, typically after each 28 days an ovum is released from the ovary. So day 1 to day 7 is known as the menstruation phase, that is when menstruation happens. So here you can see the menstruation phase. During this phase, the inner wall of the uterus starts shedding, resulting in menstrual bleeding. So this inner wall of the uterus comes out of the body through the vaginal canal as menstrual bleeding. And then after that, estrogen starts to rise. Like at the same time, when the inner wall of the uterus is shedding, estrogen hormone rises in the body, and estrogen is the hormone required by the body to promote rebuilding of the uterine wall. As you can see, it's going to start rebuilding of the uterine wall. It's going to get thicker. And then day 7 to 14, starting from somewhere here and up to here, it's known as the follicular phase and ovulation. So as you can see, the estrogen secretion increases, causing the uterine lining to thicken. So the uterine wall has started to build up and it's getting thicker. And around day 14, ovulation occurs. As you can see over here, ovulation occurs and a mature ovum is released from the ovary. Right? And then comes day 14 to 28, also known as the luteal phase. So at this phase, estrogen and progesterone levels rise to support a potential pregnancy. As you can see, estrogen and progesterone hormones are both at a high level, and it is there likewise in order to support a potential pregnancy, because the wall of the uterus is now ready to receive a fertilized ovum. So if fertilization occurs, the embryo which comes to the uterus, it implants in the uterine wall. If no fertilization happens, that means if there's been no sperms fertilized with an ovum, the hormone levels drop. They start to drop, leading to the breakdown of the uterine wall. So the end of this chart again starts from here. If there's no fertilization, the hormone level starts to drop, and that is going to lead to the breakdown of the uterine lining. And then there's something, so that's all about the phases in the menstrual cycle. There's also something else that you need to know. It's known as menopause. Usually happens during the ages of 45 and 50 years in females. So this is when the menstrual cycle stops in a female, as the ovaries stop producing ova or else any of these hormones. Before we wind up the session, I'd like to talk about some of the hormones involved in the process. It's estrogen, progesterone, FSH or follicle stimulating hormone, and the luteinizing hormone. The function of estrogen is to thicken the uterine lining, and also it supports ovum maturation. And as you can see, the estrogen rises gradually with the ovum maturation, and also it helps in the uterine wall thickening. Then there is progesterone hormone. This is especially important during the pregnancy, as it maintains the uterine lining for pregnancy. You can see when the progesterone levels are high, it's also the phase when the uterine wall is really thick. And then there is FSH hormone. It stimulates the ovum development. Then there's LH hormone, which triggers the ovulation process. You can see that LH is the highest at the phase when ovulation occurs. So that brings us to the end of part 5 of lesson 8. There's just one more part coming up, so stay tuned. See you next time with the last part of the lesson.